Hi everyone, I'm Nico Levo, and today we're looking at how to create Bardic Inspiration macros for your D&D 5th edition games. And I'm going to show you two approaches to making these macros. One which does not use any mods or APIs, and the other which does, which means you'll need a pro account for those. For the non-mod approach, what we'll be able to do is put a message in chat whenever your bard grants inspiration to another player, and that player will be able to make a die roll whenever they want to use their inspiration. For the mod approach, this can get a little more sophisticated, and we're going to check to see if the bard has Bardic Inspiration uses remaining, and if they do, great, and if they don't, we'll put a message saying that they don't. If they do, then we will pop a message into chat saying they've granted inspiration to another character. We will also deduct one use of Bardic Inspiration from their character sheet, and we'll put a token marker on the target character's token indicating that they have inspiration. And then, when that character wants to use their inspiration, the macro will dynamically determine what die should be rolled based on the bard's level. It will then roll that die, and it will remove the token marker from their character's token. So, a lot of really cool stuff for us to see today. Before we dive in, I'd just like to thank Roll20 for sponsoring this video. Alright, so let's start out with the non-mod approach. So let's have our bard Flidaria give inspiration to our halfling warlock Jolo. So we're going to click on the give inspiration button. We get prompted, whom are we giving inspiration to? We'll pick Jolo, and we get this message over here saying that Flidaria gives inspiration to Jolo. Fantastic. So how do we do that? Well, the code for that looks like this. It's very simple, one-line macro here. This first part here, and template desc, says that we are using the descriptive template from the D&D 5th edition character sheet. That's what gives us the output that looks like this. And then desc equals is the text that's displayed inside the box. So we're saying Flidaria gives inspiration to, and then this section right here is what gives us that crosshairs that allows us to select the token of the character that we're giving inspiration to. So at target says that we're going to give the bard the ability to select somebody. Give to whom is the prompt that appears that you see right here. And then token underscore name is the value that will be displayed. So it's going to get the name of our token right here, which if we open that up and look, the token's name is Jolo, and so that's what's displayed. So now what we can do is open up our bard's character sheet, head over to attributes and abilities, create an ability here, name it give inspiration, paste in the code like you see I've done right here, and then make it a token action. And now your bard is going to have that give inspiration button, and they can just click on this anytime, pick whoever they're giving inspiration to, and that message will be placed into chat. So now our warlock decides he wants to use Bardic Inspiration, so he's got a button here where we click, and you can see that Jolo has rolled Bardic Inspiration. So how do we create this macro? So the code for that is going to look something like this. So template simple means we're using this roll template here, which gives us this kind of an output. Rname equals Bardic Inspiration is the text that's displayed down here at the bottom of the text bubble. Normal equals 1 means we are not rolling advantage or disadvantage with this. This is just a single straight roll. And then R1 equals bracket bracket 1d8. That means we're rolling a d8 for the Bardic Inspiration die. And if we hover over that, you can see that we rolled a d8 and got a 7. And then this last piece, charname equals at selected token name, means that we're going to display the name of the selected token right here down at the bottom. And again, this should all be on one line. Let me just make Notepad a little bit bigger here so you can see that. This should be all on a single line when you run this. Okay, so we've got this now. What we can do is just copy this whole line, and we can make this into a macro called roll Bardic Inspiration. And what we want to do is make sure that this macro is visible to all players, and we want to show it as a token action. That's what's going to make it so that it pops up here in Jolo's toolbar when he has his token selected. So now we'll save our changes, And anytime that Jolo wants to use Bardic Inspiration, he can just say roll Bardic Inspiration, and he gets that D8. Now, the one thing to know about this is when Flidaria advances and her Bardic Inspiration die increases, so like when she hits level 10, that Bardic Inspiration die goes up to a D10, you will need to remember to go in and edit the macro so that it is rolling a D10 instead of a D8. And one other thing I should mention is that if you're doing this for a low-level bard, like a first-level bard, they start out with a D6 for Bardic Inspiration rather than a D8. But Flidaria is level 6, so her Bardic Inspiration die is a D8. So that's the non-mod approach. Now let's take a look at how we could do these sorts of macros using mods, which means that from this point forward, you will need a pro account to do what I'm about to show you. So let's start out by looking at the mod version of granting inspiration. So I'm going to click on my bard's token, click on this Give Inspiration button. Just like before, we can choose who we're giving inspiration to. And when I do that, you're going to notice a couple of things have happened. For starters, we get a message in chat saying we've inspired Jolo. We deducted one use of Bardic Inspiration from our character sheet, and we're displaying to the player how many uses they have remaining. And then we also put this blue dot on Jolo's token, and that's a visual indicator that Jolo has Bardic Inspiration and just kind of a reminder that he can use that. Now, in order to make this work, there are a handful of mods that we need. And all of those mods are part of the Roll20 mod library, so you can just come into this dropdown and find whichever ones that you need. But the first one that we're going to talk about is called ScriptCards. This comes to us from Kurt Jagers, and that's what's going to give us this output here in this format. Then we're also going to need to use ChatSetAttr, which comes to us from Jacob. That's what's going to automatically deduct the use of Bardic Inspiration from our character sheet. And we're also going to need TokenMod. That's what's going to add the marker to the target token. Now, there's one other mod that we're going to use in a few minutes. I'm just going to address it right now, called Fetch. Fetch is what allows us to retrieve properties from a token in the game. We're going to see that when we get to using the inspiration. That one comes to us from Timaw, and we're going to talk more about that in just a minute. Once all these mods are installed, there's a little bit of configuration we need to do. In TokenMod, scroll down and check this Players Can Use IDs option, and then save the script. See, by default, players can only use TokenMod for tokens that they actually have control of. And because our bard will not have control of all the tokens that they are giving inspiration to, we need to check this box so that we'll be able to put the little blue marker on the target tokens. The other piece of configuration that we're going to need to do is for fetch. And we're just going to do that right now. You type in !fetchconfig, and I'm going to put this command down in the video description. And you can see it says that fetch is currently configured as follows: players can IDs disabled. Similar thing, by default, players are only able to query properties of tokens that they themselves have control of. So we want to be able to retrieve other information about other tokens. So what we're going to want to do is say fetch config plus players can IDs. And now that is set to enabled and everything's going to work properly. Okay, so let's look at the code for giving someone inspiration like this. And that's going to look like this. So starting out, !script. That's what means what we're doing is a script card. And a script card is what's going to give us this output right here. And then everything within double curly braces is part of that script card. Okay, our first line here, title granting inspiration. That corresponds to this right here. And then we say, okay, --? This is a query. We are looking to see if the selected token, if its class resource ability, which is this right here, this is class resource. You see if I hover over that, that's what Bardic Inspiration is on the character sheet. So if that equals 0, there are no Bardic Inspirations left. And what we're saying here is if that's the case, we're going to do what's between this open square bracket and this closing square bracket. So basically what we're saying is if it's 0, we display this message right here. --+ and the pipe means this is a direct output line. It's text that's being written to the screen. So if I bump this down to 0 and we try to run that particular command, we get our message saying you are unable to inspire others until you finish your rest. So let's break down how this is working. So obviously we've got our text right here. That's the message that's being displayed. This C right here, This is saying center the text. And so this C says start centering here. This /C tells the script card to stop centering text. So we are centering this one line. And then this tag here with FF0000, that's indicating what color we want the text to be displayed in. This is a hexadecimal color that corresponds to red. And what I'm saying here is everything is going to be red until this marker right here. This is what says stop making the text red. So in this example, this line, the entire thing is going to be red. So everything between this open bracket and this closing bracket will happen if the class resource is set to 0. Otherwise, what happens is we look at this marker here. So if it is not 0, then we're going to do everything between this open square bracket and this closing square bracket. So the first thing that happens here on line 6, this -- equals, is we're declaring a variable called Bardic Inspirations. And we're setting that variable equal to whatever the current class resource value is, -1. So if we had 3 Bardic Inspirations like we do right now, and we click the button, we're going to have 2 Bardic Inspirations remaining. So we're setting Bardic Inspirations to 2. Then, just like before, we've got another direct output line, and we are centering that. And we're inspiring whom? So just like before, this is the syntax to select a token. We're going to display that. So just like we saw here, you inspire, and then the name of the target token. And then another output line, you have $ Bardic Inspirations remaining. So this is how we refer to this variable later on in the script. We enclose it in square brackets and we put a $ in front of it. And that's saying whatever value we defined here, if we said it was 2, we're going to say you have 2 Bardic Inspirations remaining. And then we're making calls to ChatSetAttr. This line right here, -- at SetAttr, this is making a call to ChatSetAttr. And what that's saying is take the selected character, which is going to be the bard, and we're going to set its class resource value to the number of Bardic Inspirations that are remaining. So it would set it to 2. And then finally, we make a call to TokenMod, and we're setting a blue status marker to the token that we targeted. And so now that we've got that done, what we can do is go back to the attributes and abilities section of the Bard's character sheet. We can create another ability. In my case, I'm calling it SC Give Inspiration for Script Card Give Inspiration, but you can call it whatever you'd like. Paste that code in here. Again, make it a token action. And now our Bard can just click on their token, click the button, and select whichever character they want to give inspiration to. So now one of our other characters wants to use their inspiration. So Jolo here has inspiration, so he's going to click on this button right here. And you can see it pops up a little card in the chat saying Bardic Inspiration, Flidaria inspired you, add a 5 to the roll. We see that we rolled a D8 for our Bardic Inspiration die, and we removed the little blue marker from Jolo's token. So let's take a look at the code for this one. The code's going to look like this. As before, we're using script cards, so everything between these double curly braces is part of the card. Just like before, we've got a title called Bardic Inspiration, and we've got a little message being written to the chat that is centered saying Flidaria has inspired us. These next few lines are how we're going to dynamically determine what die we should be rolling for Bardic Inspiration. When a bard starts out, you're rolling a D6, but as they get higher, like when they hit level 5, it goes up to a D8, at level 10 it becomes a D10, and so on. So these few lines are checking to see what level our bard is at, and figuring out what die to roll as a result of that. So this line right here, -- this is basically an if statement. So if Flidaria's base level is greater than or equal to 15, then what we're going to do is roll a D12, and we're going to set a variable called inspirationDie equal to the result of that D12 roll. Now, incidentally, we're using base level here rather than level to account for if Flidaria is multiclassing. Your base level is your primary class, and then other classes have different names for this. I have a whole video that talks about how to write macros for multiclass characters. I'll put a link to that down in the video description. But base level is what we want to use because Flidaria's primary class is Bard, so we're going to go with base level for that. And if she's greater than or equal to level 15, she's rolling a D12. Now, one other thing to mention here is you may have noticed that the syntax I'm using to query the base level is a little bit different than what we'd normally do. Normally, this would be an @ sign and an open curly brace with a closing curly brace, but here I'm using parentheses. So why is that? Well, here I'm actually using the fetch mod to retrieve this property from Flidaria's character sheet. Like I was saying earlier, by default, a player can't query a property for a character they don't own. So we're using the API to get around that. And so what fetch does is it allows us to query properties from objects in Roll20 using this parenthetical syntax. And I'll put a link down in the video description for fetch's documentation. But just know that right now what we're doing is using fetch to query the base level property off of Flidaria's character sheet and using that to determine what kind of die roll we should be making. Then we move on to the next line and we say, okay, is her level less than 15? And if it is, we're going to roll a d10 and we're going to set the d10 result to the inspirationDie variable. Then we come down and we say, is her level less than 10? And if it is, then we change the die roll from a d10 to a d8 and we make that the inspirationDie value. And then we come down again and we check to see if her level is less than 5. And if it is, we roll a d6 and replace the value in inspirationDie with that d6. So we have sort of a cascading roll here to figure out, okay, we know she's less than 15. How much less than 15 is she? Is she less than level 10 but more than level 5? In that case, she's rolling a d8. Is she less than level 5? Then she's rolling a d6. So we figure out what the die roll should be, set that die roll into the inspirationDie variable, and then we spit out a message into chat saying add whatever the value of that die roll is to your roll, as you can see right here. In this case, we rolled a d8, and that's right because Flidaria is level 6. And then the last thing that we're doing here is we're using TokenMod again to remove the blue status marker from our character's token. The dash blue here means that we are subtracting blue from the selected token. So now that we've got the code all set, what we want to do is go up to the macros section here. You want to create a new macro like I've done called Roll Bardic Inspiration. I've pasted the code in here, and you want to make sure that you have made this visible to all players and it is set to show as a token action. And now your players can click on their tokens. They'll be able to roll Bardic Inspiration like that. And again, we can see, hey, Flidaria inspired us, and we can add 5 to our roll. So there you have it. That's how you can create Bardic Inspiration macros in your D&D 5th edition games. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing. And until next time, folks, have a great day.